at the same time. Both.
Happy Friday, and I was just mentioning to Angie and Denise here, I said this is a really good turnout for Friday morning, because I know it's that time of year where some of us might like to burn some leave or just might have an RDO or something, so I really appreciate everybody coming out on a Friday morning. We want to share some stuff with you and give you a chance to ask some questions today. And first of all, I want to welcome Bob Scarborough here, the director from the Central Service Center. He's with us today, so please give Bob a nice warm welcome.
Thanks, Matt. It's always good to be home in Eastern. I spent 85% of my career in the Eastern service area, so I'm always glad to come home and see some friendly faces.
And we're glad to have you here. And in fact, Bob and I were together in Fort Worth yesterday at an all hands with the Central Service Center. So we had a great time there. Actually, Lynn Ray was with us yesterday too. So we had and Chris Burnham, who's the vice president of the PMO, was with us as well. They are obviously not here today, which in some ways may make our presentation a little easier, because it's, having your boss standing there watching you do something is not always exactly what you want to be encountering when you're giving a presentation.
Yeah, the worst part is when you introduce the VP for PMO and you say Program Management Office,
and she corrected you immediately.
Yeah, and I go Paparita, right? Right.
So I think we're going to jump right in. So what we want to talk about is several things. We're going to start with kind of the bigger picture and then drill down to some more specifics. But I'm pretty sure, because we have really high participation across the entire mission support organization, but I'm sure many of you remember that there was a survey that everyone was asked to participate in back earlier in the year that was put out by the McKinsey Group. And we really did. I forget what the percentage was, but I think we had the highest participation of any federal group they'd ever worked with.
Public sector record, 78%.
Something. Yeah. So I only mention that to kind of inform the conversation that mission support services, not just the service center, but mission support services is really trying to look at how we as an organization can transform ourselves and really be a more effective partner in the air traffic organization. Because what we do is so critical to the success of not only the field, but headquarters and everything else. So we've embarked on this effort to really take everything we've learned, some of which, frankly, I think we knew a lot of these things kind of organically already, but McKinsey gave us actual data for us to kind of build off of and drive the transformational effort forward. So it's been a really interesting and informative journey so far. So we're stepping out now and really trying to start doing something with all this information. So what we want to do today is share kind of some high-level stuff about what we learned and then some of the next steps. And then specifically we want to talk about business intelligence, which is related and integrated into this entire effort. So again, I mentioned the survey. We did a lot of interviews were done with a lot of our with the directors here in the field in all three service areas, with some of the folks in headquarters, and even some selected folks out in field facilities and in the different organizations we support. And really, so we ended up with a 115-page PowerPoint. I'm not going to show that to you. What I am going to show you is one slide, because really this distills all the information down. This is not going to be death by PowerPoint, I promise. So if you look on the left, though, here you have three focus areas, and really this is the three areas that we identified through all of this work that we did that we really need to start working on, which is we need to have a clearly identified core identity, and this is really for all of mission support services. Again, what we want is be able to say, this is mission support, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is why we do what we do, and that makes sense internally in the organization so that we all can see ourselves in that, because I think that's something, frankly, in the service center, we've struggled to see how we connect to the rest of mission support services. So the group managers participated, and I'm talking about all the group managers across all the mission support services, participated in the leadership summit back in August, and they started some work on that. There's more to be done, but we really do want to be able to identify and relate to a core identity internally, but also externally, so that we are able to clearly articulate what it is we do, why we do it, and how we do it for our partners in the other service units. and for them to understand what it is we do as well. Because one of the challenges mission support has had for probably ever since it stood up is that if you went, and I like to say this all the time, if you went to 10 different people in headquarters and said, what does mission support mean to you? You get 10 different answers. So that's the first thing that was identified. The second focus area, and you'll see it here, it's the second row, optimized and efficient execution. So what that's really about is doing everything we can to make things more effective in how we operate. So the first thing you'll see there in the first column after that is an unclear relationship between headquarters and the service centers. When we stood up the service centers 10 years ago, a lot of work was done on it, and many of you have been here since the beginning. A lot of work was done on the front end to make sure everybody understood what we were doing, how we were doing it, and why we were doing it. A lot of communication was done before, during, and after stand-up of the service centers. And I think for the first several years, while there were some bumps in the road, once we settled through those bumps, how we interacted with headquarters actually worked pretty well. But then headquarters started going through some reorganizations and realignments. And the most recent one that was done in 2012, when they took a lot of the support staff that were embedded in service units and moved them to support service units, I think one of the unintended consequences of that is it broke a lot of those relationships that have been established over time. We created management services. We moved the safety and training staffs out of the service units and put them in AJI. There were other things that happened as well. And I think trying to rebuild those connections has been a real struggle ever since. At the same time, over the last, probably the entire last 10 years, the ATO has become a more headquarters-driven organization, to be frank. So I don't have any data necessarily to support what I'm about to say, but organically at least, I would say that it feels like to me that when we stood up the service center, probably 85–90% of the work that we all did was directly to support the field on behalf of the directors of operations here. 10 to 15% of the work was really kind of going to headquarters and fulfilling requests and different things. I would say now, and you guys can tell me if I'm off, but I would say over half of what we do is probably headquarters-driven activities now. It's really morphed over the years just because of the way things have changed. So all of that I'm talking about has really created uncertainty around roles, responsibilities, and functional alignment about who should be doing what for whom. So that's one of the things that we've got to really speak to and figure out who should be doing those things. So the next thing is unclear policy and execution roles and the responsibilities and processes that support that. So what that's really about is generally at a notional level, headquarters is where policy gets created for the ATO, and really all of FAA. And what our primary function really should be about is executing that policy. Those lines have become blurred over the years as well, for a lot of the same reasons I just talked about. You have different service units in headquarters now reaching directly out and sometimes doing execution. Sometimes doing things maybe we used to do, and so that's created either organizational tension, confusion. Every group, I think, has probably experienced this in some different way. We could all speak to different examples. At the same time, sometimes because different headquarters elements are focused on doing execution in some ways, they may be missing, or there may be gaps in policy creation. And so sometimes I think we find ourselves having to fill those gaps when the policy doesn't meet the mark. And so instead of maybe us doing execution, so we end up doing to try to fulfill that policy piece, which is not really what we should be doing. So long story short, we really need to get that kind of nailed down about who should be doing what so that we can get better clarity around those elements of how we operate as well. And then lastly, really the fourth one there, well, there's three, but they're all numbered sequentially all the way through the slide. Proactive streamlining and standardization, that's really just trying to look at, and you guys have heard this before, I mean, it's been a mantra of the Service Center since we were created about wanting to be consistent. But it's not just consistency and standardization, it's really trying to drive in process improvement and becoming more effective and trying to look at where we have duplicative efforts going on, whether it's headquarters and the headquarters service unit creating a report, us creating a report, maybe each of the 3 service center locations creating separate reports on the same subject for their individual directors. It's really trying to identify those areas and try to drive better efficiencies and better standardization. So the last focus area is around organizational performance management, and what that's really about is having shared goals throughout the organization, throughout mission support, so that, and when I say that, what I mean is that the service centers, and we've been working for some goals, and I think we've just about got those finalized now for FY17, but our goals should feed up into higher level mission support, which should feed up into the top level ATO goals, and should feed up into the top level FAA goals. They should all make sense. We should be able to see that vertically, and it should make sense horizontally too, so that what we're focused on is important and it connects to the priorities of air traffic, of tech ops, of sysops. There should be that connection across the organization. And then the last thing is that I think we all do different ways of trying to find out from people we provide services to, how are we doing? What we really want to try to get, though, is that we have a standardized method of getting that feedback on how we're performing as an organization. I know Bob does some things, we do some things, Western does some things, Mission Support does some different things. We want to establish some norms for how we get that kind of feedback. So that's just you had to listen to me talk for 5 minutes instead of a 115-page PowerPoint, so you can decide which would have been more painful. But that distills down what we've learned from all the work that's been done, and really is driving the next steps and what we're going to be focusing on as we move forward. Bob, I talked a lot there. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think Mac really did a nice job outlining it. I was thinking about it when he was talking about the unclear relationship, the transition from the service area focus to a more blended focus between headquarters and the service area and how it used to be. I remember when I started in Tech Ops or AF, that tells you that in 2001 I used to go around and count cards, right, to tell you how we did on maintenance tasks. There was no automated system, and the world's changed, right? We all carry around cell phones to tell a lot. I do banking online, and it's changed, and we need to think about how we evolve and try to do that, because headquarters is under tremendous pressure now to provide information. If you remember the Asiana accident a couple of years ago, I think 17 seconds after they landed, there was a video on Twitter already of the crash. So that it just tells you how much the world changed and the demand for information. I think that's why some of our roles transitioned over the last few years. We would never have thought about it 10 years ago. I said, why do they need that? But now it's a different world.
So what are we doing with this? So we had a meeting in headquarters 2 weeks ago. Bob and Clark Dessing and myself with Jody McCarthy, our Deputy Vice President, and we met with key selected individuals from the different service units that we work with in the ATO. And we kind of started with this construct that I just described to you. And what we're doing is we've started the work of trying to identify what it is where we need to take the organization. Mission support, the service centers, but even more. And it was really interesting because we had the right people in the room, because it became a very productive conversation very quickly. And it really morphed from what transformational things need to happen with a service center to really about how does the ATO need to transform. Because all of those things that I just shared with you, it resonated with everybody in the room, and they recognized that for this to really truly work, they've got to change some of the things about the way they operate. They've got to drive some different behaviors downward in each of their organizations, and they've got to make sure that they are on board with whatever we agree to across the ATO about who's going to be responsible for doing what. So as an example, I think we talked at one point in the meeting a little bit about, was it hiring? I know we were talking about management services, and I can't remember, was it hiring?
Talking about Jeff.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So it was interesting. Jeff Planey, some of you might know Jeff. I spent some time in Eastern. He says, I don't care who hires my folks. He said, I just want to go to one place and get my folks there. If the service center can do it, works for me. He says, it doesn't need to be a headquarters resident organization. He says, I just want to have one place to go. And we've heard that both from Tim Morrell, other VPs, that they really just want to know, who do I go to get the service that I need to be able to perform the operational function that I need. That was a really critical message that I hope resonated throughout through the folks in the room, and I think it did. And it opened my eyes to a different solution, potentially.
So no decisions were made in that meeting 2 weeks ago. What we really did was we identified kind of what what we thought the big issues were that we needed to grapple with. We identified what we thought were some of the roadblocks, what the needs of the organization were. We had somebody in there taking notes. I think we had 18 pages of notes, and when we were done at the end of the day, we're going to be meeting again week after next in headquarters, and I think we're going to have more concrete actions coming out of that meeting. But we're moving smartly ahead. The plan with the overall transformational effort, and I'm not. This is not just about the service center we're talking about right now. This is about all of mission support. Is to really have an executable plan in place by March, so in 6 months. Maybe sooner if possible.
Down to 5 now.
Yeah.
And just for informational purposes, this is just phase one. Jody McCarthy, our Deputy Vice President, said we're going to look at the entire organization. These are, the service center is just one of the focus areas for this round, because I think she believes there's opportunities for us to gain efficiencies, be smarter in how we do business and better partners, and do roles, responsibilities much clearer than we have done in the past. So I think this is just the first round. We're the lucky participants.
So the other thing, some of you probably know this, some of you may not know this. A lot of work was done in the last year and a half, 2 years with management services. It started out from one of the ATO leadership summits we had a couple of years ago to try to look at how they are constructed and how they intersect with our ASGs and BSGs in the service centers. A lot of work was done. They did what they called a crosswalk, looking, it looks like a spaghetti chart, all the different connection points. And that started out, it was unclear where that was going to go. There was even talk at some point about straight lining ASGs and BSGs to management services. So I'm happy to share that yesterday we got a briefing from management services, and they are reorganizing to better match up with our ASGs and BSGs. I think, it's not going to be lockstep identical, but I think the spaghetti chart is now going to be much more, maybe just some wavy lines instead of crossing spaghetti. But they're committed to trying to move their organization forward, to partner better. I think the relationships are already better with our ASGs and BSGs. I think the leadership that's in place now with Nancy Kalinowski and Beth Mack, and our own Angela McCullough is up there as a director, I think it shows great promise, and I'm encouraged by what they're doing, and I think we're going to experience a lot of the same things across the other service units. And to that point, Bob and Clark and I have been very intentional about when we're in headquarters, but also taking specific trips to headquarters to be advocates on behalf of the service center and try to strengthen relationships with the different directors and some of the DVPs and VPs up at headquarters whenever we're up there, and sometimes going up there just to do that third thing. So, now we're going to start driving a little bit down into more specifically about the service centers and towards business intelligence. So, Bob, I will turn it over to you.
I think we've covered this pretty well, this slide, why the service center. So with the organizational element, that's these mission support services identified 2 directorates that had an opportunity to focus areas. And it wasn't, it was just based on feedback, relationships between our partners. And the interesting part, they did this big gallery of results. And it was interesting, the VPs, the COO, they all walked through it. And the comments, and I'm sure you guys have seen some of that or heard about some of it, they talked about what Matt shared earlier. It wasn't just about what mission support was doing, but how each of the service units played into this relationship, and the broken parts that we used to have pretty well aligned, but since 2012, the last reorg, really impacted this. And they started to go, it was one of those aha moments that we needed to take a look at this as a partnership through the ATO. And I think the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago just continued to support that outcome. Thank you. Next one. So one of the things that was clearly identified from our partners was the need for better analytics. We are world-class at doing reports. We put reports together that I am just awestruck by. They provide a great amount of information, a wealth of information. One of the challenges we have, though, is sometimes we have so much information on there, it's sometimes hard to discern how to make that great decision in a timely manner. Because sometimes, as we said, I shared earlier, we got Snapchat, we got Twitter, we got, Facebook, Instagram. I'm sure there's a lot of other ones out there. My kids would know. I think what we're trying to do, though, is be able to tell the story well, it's an elevator speech. I use a 15-minute briefing. You know, we may schedule a briefing in an hour, but in the first 15 minutes, we should be able to tell the story, right? That if they have to leave, they should be able to walk away and have some information, critical information. That we really want to get where we partner with them, get to be part of their organization where we own part of it. In the sense of, I want us to be better, I think we all want us to be better engaged with the work that's being done in tech ops and air traffic and also with mission support services. And look for areas to look for causal factors, right? You know, somebody asked a question yesterday at Central that was really interesting. He says, so we've been doing a lot with surface training, right? Surface training with runway incursions and things like that. Has anything changed? And that was a really interesting question, right? So that would be the hope with part of our better analysts, right? Analytics is would we have an opportunity to really look at that and look if we spend a lot of money in training, are we getting the results? Or the answer is we need better technology, right? That's got to be the reason we can improve. But maybe we want to look at the causal factors. Maybe it's just these three things happen. Maybe we had a heavy traffic push. Maybe we had IFR weather and we only had one ground controller. Maybe that's what caused it. If we added a second ground controller, maybe we reduced the likelihood of a runway incursion or an incident by 80%. I think that's where we're trying to get to in the future. I think that's a great opportunity. So an air traffic manager could look, or a supervisor could look, and the next day they could say, hey, I only got one ground controller between 10 and 1. I'm going to bring somebody in for 3 hours. And we'll lower the risk of this happening. You want to take this one?
Well, so, yes, thank you. Before I really speak to this slide, though, I think it's important to touch on. This is something that's been kind of, when I say this, I mean business intelligence. It's been something that's been kind of growing over the last year and a half. We were meeting with the group managers this morning and had a really good conversation. And everybody, I hope, still is aware of our initiatives. We haven't talked about those a lot, but certainly I know many people in the room here with us today participated in the effort that we did where we focused on 9 reports for a 6-month period using the Covey 4 Disciplines of Execution tool set. And that was a really interesting exercise that we went through. And it was a really great exercise because originally it started out with, well, we're going to try to make these reports better. What it became over time, though, was we had this energy that got created by bringing people together from different groups, and it started breaking down. When I say breaking down, there were kind of barriers, that what I like to call the old cylinders of excellence between different groups, where folks just because of the natural course of business, were not necessarily interacting. And once we got them in the room and got them started talking to each other, focused on this particular product, information started getting surfaced, and I think the folks involved realized that there was some connectivity between the different information from the different groups, and there was a benefit in all of that. So it was a really, I think it was a tremendous exercise. I think it enhanced what we were already doing. So at the end of it, I think we were very pleased with the results we got out of that effort. And we had, if everyone will recall, we had several people, the initiatives management team, who we actually took out of their positions for 6 months and had them focused on leading that effort. At the end of it, because we have business we have to conduct, we allowed them to go back to their positions. And what we found was, with many efforts, when you have everybody focused on it and things are really running in a very intentional way, you make tremendous progress. When you take away that impetus and that focus, things tend to go, so we may have gone from here to here, and maybe we're here now. So part of what we're trying to do with business intelligence is take all of the information that I shared at the beginning about the transformational efforts, what we learned with what we did here with our initiatives, what they've learned in Central with some of the things they've done, and we're trying to be intentional in creating a structure that will continue to drive forward the progress that we've already made as an organization.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, first of all, I want to thank Eastern for doing that exercise, right, of the initiative management team. That really drove home, because I became the service center director last year, and Mac was sharing some of the things he was doing. I knew Western had done some things, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Essentially, looking around, I'm going, what are we doing? So it was great. Angie, and I've known Angie before, she came and briefed us on how that was going, right? And I took that lesson that you talked about, it kind of backed a little bit from where you were hoping it to go. And I thought, well, I need to do something like that. So I did the same thing. I took some folks out very intentionally out of their positions, and I got some feedback on that, and feedback's a gift. Trust me, I got a lot of feedback. And it was really interesting is I didn't want to put them back in the groups because I was concerned about the fact we're under a lot of stress, right? I bet every one of you's had some deadline that's probably due yesterday, and you need it today because you're sitting there going, well, I'm talking about this, I got things I could, you know. So I didn't want that to happen to our folks. So for us, we kind of looked at that amount. So part of this discussion we're going to have today is taking the best of all three of us to try to move this forward so we don't fall into that trap where today's fire is what we're focused on. We get caught up in that a lot. But I really was thankful the fact that Eastern had done it ahead of me because I could sit there and go, okay, I'm not going to do that part of it. But I really did model what we did in Central after what Eastern had done. So I'm very appreciative of my friends in Eastern.
Thank you, Bob. So before we go into any more slides, and there's not a lot of slides, but I also want to share, and you guys, when we kicked off the initiatives and the different times we've talked, I hope you get that there's a sense of urgency on our part, because there really is. And you guys may not experience it the same way we do, but I really think that we're at a point in time where we have a tremendous opportunity because of the focus that Terry Bristol, our Chief Operating Officer, has. I mean, she recognizes that when we did some of the reorganizations we've done at headquarters and we created mission support and some other organizations, that time has passed, mission support's been working very hard, the service centers have been in place for a long time, and she believed it was time to really kind of take and assess things and see if mission support is really constructed the right way. And so when I say constructed, please, because I know some folks have wondered, does transformation mean reorganization? So the short answer to that question is no, it doesn't. What it really means is clearly identifying what the roles and responsibilities are for headquarters, for us, across all the service units, and making sure that we have our functions aligned properly. Now, realigning functions could mean that there are some changes to how we do things. It could mean a little bit of movement, but it does not mean a wholesale reorganization. It does not mean straight lining any parts of the service center to headquarters. That is not going to be part of this. But it really is about roles, responsibilities, and functional alignment. That's where we're headed, trying to really make things work better so that each one of you are able to focus on what is most important to the organization. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Because we could move on, again, just to echo what Max said, we are not sitting there saying we'll move all the boxes around. It was funny, we got the briefing yesterday for management services, and the first thing they said is we moved the boxes, but we still need to clearly identify roles and responsibilities and functions. We need to partner with you.
Yeah, we're kind of going the other way.
Yeah, they recognize, we are going the other way, but they recognize just moving the box around doesn't fix everything.
Yeah.
But I think they were at least trying to get the functions into the right bucket versus...
And to their credit, they really were trying to align better with us than probably what should have been done from the outside.
Yeah.
So again, this is really about enhancing and strengthening our partnerships with the directors and with headquarters. I don't know if you want to say anything to this particular one, Bob.
No, I think it's pretty easy, like enhanced decision-making, looking for trending, improve alignment with our goals, look for causal factors. Those are things we're looking for with this. But it's really about partnership, right? It's one of the things these folks, somebody asked a question earlier today, or one of the other ones, is this team going to be here forever? I don't know that answer, but there is a support function for us right now. I think if we get to the point, we're really trying to do is look at targeting or focusing on improving our analytical skills. And that would be at an analyst level, specialist level. We're not looking to make specialist analysts. We're just trying to ask the right critical thinking, the right questions, and we're actually going to be very intentional about the training we provide. We're going to focus on giving skills throughout our organization. It's not just with this BI team, It's more about trying to raise the level of our skills through training, critical thinking, discussions, workshops, etc. And anything that comes in. So the other question somebody asked me was, okay, so I've got a question about infrastructure. Then, and now you're going to go to PRG. If you got airspace, you're going to go to OSG. You're going to work partners still with the groups that you're in right now. PIT is a support function.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Bob, that if you take anything away from this, really this team, I want you to think of it as a resource for you guys. I mean, it really is supposed to be about not only partnerships externally with the directors and their staffs in the field, but it's really partnerships with everyone in each group in the service center. It's really to try to help continue to build in an intentional and structural way the behaviors and the processes that we want to continue to enhance. When I refer you back to what I said a few minutes ago about the initiatives and what we learned from what we did when we put that team together, it's really trying to build on that and create those partnerships. It really is a resource. And we're already doing a lot of training this quarter. In fact, I think we had some folks actually step out of a class this morning. And we're being very intentional about trying to provide that exact kind of training. That's one of our commitments to everyone here.
And we're doing the same thing in Central Iowa and West also. And a couple of the other outcomes are open from this, and I think there's a slide on outcomes, but they're just slides. It's really trying to get to the point where we're partnered across the service centers, right? So if Eastern's working on something already regarding something to support air traffic or tech ops, we're going to let Eastern carry the ball. Now, we may partner with them if that's what's needed. But if Eastern's already got it, it's not a competition for us to say, well, Central, we got to go. Because Ryan seems to be ahead of us. We need to catch Ryan. It's not about that. If Ryan's group's got it and they're working together collaboratively with air traffic or tech ops and the BI team, we're going to let them go. And that product will be what we try to use across. If it's a national effort, we're going to try to use it from all three service centers, not duplicate efforts 3 times, right? Because we're a resource. We got other things we can do that can focus on to help move the organization forward.
Well, the next slide talks about headquarters partnerships, and that dovetails exactly with what you're saying, because when you talk about either duplication or, as I've heard you say, triplication, I like that. I'm sure many of you experienced where we may generate a report, Central may generate a report, Western may generate a report, but some service unit and headquarters may generate a report on the same topic. Do we really need all those different reports? Wouldn't it be great if we had either a single source database that everyone could pull information from, and it was easy to use, and you could just filter it whatever way you needed to, and we did not have to either hand hack things or do all the work that we do now? Think how that would free us up to maybe focus on things that we believe were more important and significant for the organization. So part of what we're trying to do is really establish some things that will strengthen those partnerships with headquarters as well. I'll let you handle this one.
Okay. First of all, why I remember, because sometimes the thoughts go through the gray matter pretty fast. I want to make sure we recognize some of the folks that have helped do this, because they've really done a lot of yeoman work on this. We tasked this small group of senior leaders within the organization to help put some of this together. And when we talk about this, it's a job analysis tool, the PD, the communication strategy, the governance, the frequently asked questions. So Angela Smith, the senior advisor here in Eastern, led the effort. We kind of gave her the ball and said, good luck. We did say good luck. So Angela did a really, really great job, and Maria James also helped us with that. So
yay.
And just the other team members are from Central, Robert Beck and Michelle Watt, and then from Western, Chris Ramirez and Jay Agber. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the outstanding work that Lisa Rutledge, did I get the right name? She did. She really did the email blast, helped with videos, the KSM site. So Lisa, thank you so much. And there's jobs open in Texas.
Wow.
My mic just got cut off. No, but again, thank you so much, Lisa. So each of the teams is going to be made up of 6 senior analysts or specialists. Somebody said, are we all going to be analysts? No, it's going to be made up of the people we think need to be on there. They're going to have a director or direct report to the director through a team manager. They're going to be a KVM manager. Fact is, I think the bid might be out today. It's supposed to be out today through the 14th.
It is out.
Excellent. It's going to be bid in Southwest for all 3 locations at the the same time. So if you're interested, it's a great opportunity to spend more time with Clark, Matt, or Bob. I turned away so nobody would laugh in front of me, you know. Probably the primary thing is for them to be partners with the groups within the service center, also with our ATO partners, but everything will go through the groups. There may be special projects that they get involved in, but for the most part, we're trying to keep our organization running the same way it was when it comes to entrance and exit. We're hoping for some new capabilities, and we are going to take these right now out of Hyde, right? So that's, we have a staffing limit, so we're going to use those folks, but each of the service center directors have made a commitment that during this year, we're going to make sure if Maria loses somebody to go on this team, we're going to let her fill that position. Our goal is to get back to our number at the end of the year, but the good news is we have pretty decent attrition. I think we all have similar attrition rates, so we'll be able to get to our number at the end. But I think we're going to gain some efficiencies, and we'll probably look at our organization and see how we want to manage that in the future. But I think for right now, I think we'll be okay. I think we're doing an external bids too, right? For the 15-15s.
Yeah, and Adam, did you mention when the vacancy announcements are coming out for the?
No, I didn't, but that's a great question. So the vacancies will be out in a couple of weeks. They're going to be open for 10 days. Internally in the FAA, they're being bid FAA-wide. We are going to bid a 15-15 series externally for 3 days. The grade levels for them are I and J, 4 permanent, 2 temporary. And I think that's it on that. So on the expected outcomes, we kind of talked about this. It's not just analytics with this BI group. It's really with the service center, all the analysts, the specialists. We're actually thinking too, as we mature, we're going to try to help the analysts because there's analysts out in the field. And the better that they're prepared to do the critical thinking, the discussion, ask the questions, the better our partnership's going to be, the better products we're going to get. Because usually when you talk to people, they give you insights that you hadn't thought of. I'm a lot better when I talk to Matt and Clark about ideas than when I sit there and I hold them internally, because they'll give me some insight. I'll give you an example. If I'd had my way, we'd have done this 2 months ago and we would not have been anywhere near as successful, but I got lots of feedback and gave me an opportunity to be a little bit better prepared for this.
I'll give you some more later.
I'm sure I won't get it. And it's a gift. You know, the good thing with feedback is you can accept it, reject it, or consider it.
Yes, you can. Yes, you do.
So improved reporting analytics, you guys can see that, improved information. So we're really, you know, business intelligence isn't just about better reporting. Some of it is, some of you that are involved with Business Service Group are familiar with AJW. They're doing this dashboard, financial dashboard. It's not necessarily going to give us, you know, causal factors and things like that, but instead of us producing 7 reports within 7 directorates in tech ops, we'll use one common dashboard that meets the needs of everybody. So we just reduced 7 people having to do this work, or 7 teams having to do this work constantly every month. That's kind of business intelligence, business acumen. It's really a smart way for us to move forward organizationally. So to me, those are some of the outcomes we may find too. The triplication, duplication, whatever.
Yeah. So I want to reiterate something you said a few minutes ago, because I think it's important. Because I know, you know, when you hear something like this, folks think, well, it's the new flavor of the day, and you know, what does this mean? Or you may be thinking we're kind of overreacting to something. And that's why I talked about the sense of urgency that we have. And this is, I want to make sure you guys know from our perspective, this is not something that we've chosen to do lightly. It's not something that we did and made a quick decision about. It's something that we've been thinking about and forming for a year and a half, and which I tried to describe some of the journey of how we got here. But I also think it's important, and you said this a little while ago, Bob, that if we get our optimum outcome, that what we're trying to get, that you had on that last slide, becomes organic in the organization and things are really, we've achieved the outcomes we hope to, yeah, it's possible this team might either go elsewhere in the organization or might turn into something else, but we don't have any intentional plans about that right now. We're really trying to stand this up to create a structure to drive the outcomes we're looking for, but we're open to what the future may hold. I guess is how I would describe it. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, I think Matt's right. I don't think we're married to anything that says this. We're trying this, we're going to evaluate it. We need to have some outcomes that we can actually measure to find out if this is successful for us. Did we make a difference by doing this intentionally this way? Because if we don't get the return that we think we're going to get on it, we'll probably look at something, we'll look at whether we need to continue that or not. One of the things somebody said, business intelligence is now our new favorite word, right? Throughout the organization, everybody's doing analytics. They got an analytics team all over the place. One of the things I want to make sure we're really clear on is we're not trying to duplicate, we're not competing with headquarters, we're not competing with other service area teams. So I'll give you an example. There was a QC/QA conference a few weeks ago in Fort Worth. I think my team had been piloting a couple things, and Mike Balder, who's works in AGI, he says, "That's pretty cool." I said, "You can have it. You can have the thing you want to put on the safety dashboard. It's yours. We don't need to keep it." So we're not trying to do anything like that. Western's done some things with utilities. I'm not going to try to do the same thing with utilities because they've already figured it out. Mike's doing things here in Eastern with his folks in QCG. So what I'm trying to really drive home is this is not competitive on our part. We're just trying to make the ATO organization stronger, better towards the mission of safe and efficient flight while being environmentally conscious.
Well, I like the way I see what you did there. You worked that in there. That was good.
It's all about the mission, right?
So that's pretty much what we wanted to share. At this point, I'd love to open it up to questions if anybody has any questions about this or other topics. You've got both of us here, and we'd be more than glad to field questions.
And just a comment, Clark does send his regrets that he had to be in San Diego for
See the noise meeting?
He was in the noise meeting, and I hear those are always fun, right, Ryan?
Actually, Mr. Bob Simkowitz can tell you all about that. He actually spent 3 weeks helping them out in SoCal.
So he knows all about that area. And so Clark really wanted to be here, but he does send his apologies that he wasn't able to attend, but he had to go to San Diego and spend some time with some folks about noise.
So questions? Or have we numbed you into silence and it's too early to use a second cup of coffee?
Yes.
That was feedback.
Yes, Sheila.
You said these positions are temporary, but that you're backfilling behind the positions that someone was selected for one of these positions. How is that going to transition?
So I'm very comfortable with, because I inherited this when I came into the job with bubble staffing. I can defend what we're doing. And actually, we've been very transparent upwards in the organization. Lynn and Jody support what we're doing. I'll be honest with you, you said get back down to our number by the end of the year.
I'm just saying.
If I'm 5 or 6 over at the end of the year, I can live with it, because last year, not the one we just ended, but the year before, I think I ended the year, what was it, 18 over or something like that, Maria, I think.
So the balance.
That's my fault. Not
Yeah,
yours.
maybe, because I'll say something about that.
So I'll take that bullet if we end up in that. I'm perfectly comfortable.
So just for clarity, first of all, the team manager and 4 of the 6 positions are permanent selections. 2 will be in detail, not to exceed a year, maybe made permanent. But I'm going to be okay with being over 2.
Yeah, well, and we can, I think many of you, and you're probably familiar with this, Sheila, we actually went through an ATO exercise not too long ago where there were 73 positions that were, the DVPs got together and kind of doled those out across the service units. And what those were, and there was originally 100, but they took some off the top for some other things. But what they're doing is, I mean, those of you who work in air traffic hiring know that we have a ceiling that we're never able to get to just because of attrition and what it takes and everything. So the ATO at the top levels, they've decided instead of leaving those vacant positions over there, they're going to send those out to the other service units and say, go ahead and fill those and use those. So that's what we're doing. I share that to say that I think there may still be the possibility that we could get some more authorized positions down the road. Don't take that to the bank, but I'm kind of hoping for that in the future as well. So I would say there's an element of risk in what we're doing, but I think it's a very small risk. I'm perfectly comfortable with us being overstaffed if it comes to that. Other questions?
Other questions anywhere? No, anywhere?
No. This is for Bob, right, Nicole?
I don't need the microphone.
Sure you do.
Okay. So you mentioned in the briefing that this is actually to fill current needs that the directors aren't having met by the groups. Can you give some examples of what those are that really you need the BI team to address?
No, I would like.
Oh, you're so funny. Did we actually say those exact words like that? Because I think we do good work now. What we're trying to do is enhance and build on what we already do. What I will say is that I believe that organizationally, we have room for improvement when it comes to, and I don't want to point out any specific example because I don't know that would be productive, but what we want to do is try to take, because we have tremendous amounts of information and we generate a lot of reports, but when you guys have heard me say some of this before, what we really want to get toward though is where we take that information and synthesize it down to what are the critical points, what do we think are the risk factors that whoever we're giving this information to, that person needs to focus on, and some recommendations so that we're partnering and advocating on their behalf. In fact, some part of the conversation we had this morning is, in some cases, I think the directors and the deputies would love it because they're so busy and they've got so much going on. They just want to know we got it, we're taking care of it. And I know we do that in a lot of cases. But I also think there's room for improvement. And Bob talked about the predictive piece. And this is not so much, in some ways, we're asking folks to do things we've never asked them to do before. And that's the way I would characterize it more than saying that we're not meeting something. We're asking to build a capability we haven't asked for before.
And I think just to tie into that, that was a great question, Nicole. I think one of the things we're going to find in this is you're going to have resource available now that is very specific to things that we may not have been focused on in the past. I mean, I think that's the part that now when you have that question, we had a discussion about reporting this morning, just regarding about reports and how do we do a better job and how do we look at it from a critical point of view. Now you can sit there and actually go over and have a discussion with somebody that their focus on this is how to look at things differently. So you'll have somebody to bounce ideas off and look at your reports and say, hey, give me your thoughts. I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think of that? So I think it's not about that we're just trying to up-level where we're at this point. I don't know if we answered your question, Nicole. So.
Other questions? Yes.
Okay, good morning.
Hey.
When looking at what you have this team tasked with doing, it looks like a lot of it is very methodical and it'll be in this set routine potentially. Do you foresee them doing more tactical type work with our teams or with our groups? You know, we encounter challenges with airport sponsors and they turn into big, huge, concerns. So I was wondering if this team will help out and be a conduit between us and headquarters for more tactical type issues and not just reporting as well.
So I think the short answer is probably yes. I think we see multiple roles for this team. I think part of it is going to be if you or any group have a large-scale project or something that maybe is different or becoming very large, they could help you design products that would better support that and better construct it. They could also be a conduit, as you said, to headquarters and also help you. I mean, it really is there to be a resource for you and to help. I think it's going to depend. I think it's going to be different depending upon what the need is and what the ask is for you or anyone else. It's going to be different in some cases. I don't know.
And I think a lot depends on what the issue is, right? If it's just something that's a runway extension, I don't know exactly where you're coming from. That may be working one way, but one of the things I thought about is, I lost my train of thought all of a sudden. That's scary, because I had a
I'm sure it was a really good
idea. I'm going to think about it. Gosh, I hate when that happens. I'll just pass it this point. I had the right answer to it.
You'll think about it on the way to the airport. It'll
I'll
come
think
back
about
to
it
you.
between now and then. You had another question.
Okay.
I have
Yeah.
a question, I just have a comment.
Yeah.
This is the most that I've heard about business intelligence, and I think this is a great idea because working with the service center initiatives, you see up close and personal where our strengths are, where our challenges are, and it'd be great if we could get a group of 300 people that are good at everything. That's not going to happen. So if we can focus on where our strengths are and put maybe a group of people together that can, make the service center shine, show where we're nimble, make us a appear to be more adjustable and flexible. I think it's a great idea.
We should have had her do the briefing. That was
I'm still trying to figure
beautiful.
out what I forgot.
Oh, sorry. That was, thank you. Thank you for the comment. That was actually a great, very concise description of what we're trying to do.
Was that what you forgot?
I'm still
Thank
thinking
you.
about it.
That's going to bother you, isn't it? You need another cup of coffee.
You need it back to you.
So I want to honor we set this for an hour, and I hate to run over, and I know you guys don't want to run over it either. Do we have any other questions? I do want to touch on one other thing before I let you go, though. Do we have any other questions? Okay, hearing no questions, I'm going to take a little personal time real quick, because I think this is most likely my last chance to stand in front of you as the director of the Eastern Service Center. I think by now, I hope everybody knows that I've accepted a job at headquarters. I'm sorry, Bob. Did I forget to tell you?
Say it's not so.
Yeah. And I just wanted to share with you guys that, if you read my email, and I understand if you didn't read my email, because as some people have told me in the past, I write long emails. And thank you, Denise. Being the director of this organization has been probably the greatest privilege of my entire career. You guys, it's been an awesome 2.5 years, and making the choice to go do this in headquarters was probably one of the toughest things I've ever done. I'm only doing it because I think I can go help with some of the things going on in headquarters. I am so reluctant to leave here. I have people tell me congratulations all the time, and I try to accept that, but I have very bittersweet emotions about leaving you guys. You guys mean so much to me, and I enjoy working with each and every one of you, and you guys do such great work. I just wanted to tell you that I want to say thank you. Thank you for letting me be the director of the Eastern Service Center for the last 2.5 years. It has been an honor and a privilege. So thank you so much, and with that, enjoy your Friday and have a great weekend.
That's what I thought you did. Yeah, I got a couple of things. Hattie would not approve of this being in the aisle like this. Good morning.
I did, yes.